What's up on the shoulders of giants, family? I am Joseph Ward, and I'm back with some more content for you. I love doing this, so I just keep recording. I keep getting these ideas, and I keep recording. So I'm here to give you a review of Will Smith's the Emancipation movie featuring Will Smith. That's what I'm here to give you a review of. I watched the movie. I actually watched the movie twice. I don't think I'll watch it again. It wasn't a horrible movie, but I don't think I'll watch it again. Maybe not. I watched it twice, and I think I'm good for a while. But I wrote some notes down, and I want to give y'all my thoughts and the little breakdown of this Will Smith Emancipation movie. All right, so man, let's just go ahead and jump on in, and make sure you hit that subscription bell too. Subscribe, hit the bell so you get the notifications. Share this, comment, like, all that stuff. Hit that like button. Hit that like button. All right. So the Emancipation movie, it is the story of Peter. And Peter was an enslaved black man who became famous because of this picture. Because of this picture, this is what made Peter well known throughout the world. This is the character that Will Smith is playing. So the movie is called Emancipation because it's set around Abraham Lincoln signing the Emancipation Proclamation, and the legal, see my bunny is the legal freedom of enslaved Africans. So that was 1863. The Emancipation Proclamation was signed by Abraham Lincoln. So enslaved black people are free. So it's also set in the state of Louisiana, right? So in this area of Louisiana, 350,000 black people are still enslaved. And these people are waiting on actually, these people have no idea that they're free. Now, the Union Army is encroaching upon their territory because they are coming further into the South. But at this point, the black people within this area that Peter is in have no idea that the Emancipation Proclamation has been signed. They don't know yet. And so this is the setting of the movie. Now, this is a spoiler, so if you haven't seen the movie and want to see the movie, you're going to get spoiled. And this movie is filled with trauma and post-trauma that caused post-traumatic slave syndrome. This movie is filled with a lot of trauma, a lot of scenes of physical, psychological, emotional trauma. All right? So, like I said, the setting is they are in this specific area of Louisiana that's 5 days away from Baton Rouge. So the Union Army is in Baton Rouge. And so that's where they're going to need to get, but they're like 5 days away. So in the beginning, Peter is using Bible passages to comfort his family because Peter is a believer in Jesus. He's a Christian. So he's heavy in his faith, and that's a big theme throughout the movie because the theme is Peter was inspired by God for his freedom, and his faith and his dedication to God is what gave him the strength to keep going, right? So, as I said, he's comforting his family. So in this scene, he's washing his wife's feet, and he's doing his best to comfort his wife and his 4 little girls because he's about to be taken away to work on this railroad. They're working on the railroad so they can have a train bring army supplies in for the Confederate Army. And so that's what the scene is. He's comforting his wife. He's rubbing her feet. He's actually washing her feet and comforting her. And then these 3 white men bust into his house, and they start grabbing on him to snatch him and take him away. So he starts fighting them away because he's like, hey, I can walk. Don't treat me like no animal. Don't treat me inhumane. I can walk. So they start fighting. And then finally they get out of the house, and he kind of fights them off a bit until is put in his face, and then, well, actually, not into his face. One of the white men put a gun in his wife's head, and then putting a gun in his wife's head that caused him to stop fighting the men. And because all along he wasn't resisting going with them, because he was prepared to go with them to work on the railroad, but it's the way that the men came in, busting and barging them in and fighting with him and everything. So he was resisting them fighting him. He wasn't resisting going. But after the tussle, after he calmed down, one of the white men hit him in the back of the head with the gun, loaded him up in the wagon, and they took him on. All right. So on the way to the railroad work camp, and this is part of this is where a lot of the psychological trauma is going to start to be shown, right? So on the way to the railroad work camp, they pass they're on this road, and they see a series of poles with a bunch of heads of black men. And these are black men who were eliminated, and their heads were placed on these poles for intimidation reasons, for them to say, hey, if you try to run away, this is what's going to happen to you. So we're going to instill fear into you from the beginning. We're going to abuse you and instill fear in you, and because we want you to understand that you are powerless. We want you to understand that we're more powerful than you, and if you run away, we're going to catch you. There are consequences. So psychological trauma is happening. And so, like I said, they're being used to build a railroad for the Confederate Army, so the Confederate Army can bring supplies in to help them defeat the Union Army. So after they take all the men out of the cart, they have the men heavily chained. They have chains on their necks, hands and feet, and they have the men, basically kind of like you would see in the chain gang. And they have the men, double time trotting, going to this place. And then when they get them all in this one area and they have them lined up, the specific instructions is, don't look any of these white men in the eyes. Look down at the ground. Peter is defiant from the beginning. So remember when I just talked about him fighting off the white men. So that's one of the things is Peter has a rebellious spirit, and Peter has this spirit that needs to be broken. And it's one character who is determined to break Peter's spirit, because Peter got too much freedom in his heart. So like I said, they told him to look down at the ground, don't look nobody in the eyes. And what Peter does, he's still looking people in the eyes. And they're like, boy, did we tell you to look down at the ground? And so they're going into the work camp. After that encounter, they're going into the work camp. And as Peter and the group of men that are chained together, as they enter the work camp, simultaneously they are showing in the background, and you can hear the screams and everything of a black man that they just caught who was running away. Now, they were using this man as an example, another example of what happened if you run away. So, on one hand, as they're entering this work camp and they're seeing the conditions that they're about to exist in, on one hand, they see a massive group of black men being overworked and abused, beaten, abused, and overworked. And then on the other hand, they see and hear this black man who was attempting to run away, who was captured. They see him literally being drugged behind a horse. They tied his leg to a horse, and they're dragging him behind the horse. And the cherry on top, or the tipping point for this, is a part of the psychological trauma that they used is there's one black man who his only job is to preach the word of the obedient slave. God said, be an obedient slave. God said, be a hard worker. God said, mind your master. God said, do your job. God said, take your punishment. God said that you're supposed to be punished now in this lifetime so you can receive your reward in the next lifetime, because we have to be punished because we had to do something. So, and that's one of the things throughout the work camp is, while all of this abuse and trauma is going on, they have this preacher man preaching the so-called word of God, the word of the obedient slave. Hey, be obedient to your master no matter how abusive that your slave master is being to you. And so he's preaching this so-called word of God. The man that they were dragging behind the horse, the man that they caught that was the runaway, they took him, they placed him on his knees, placed his head upon the block, and took an R, or they had a branding iron in the shape of an R on hot coals. They took the brand off of the hot coals and branded him right on his right cheek, put the R on his right cheek, the literal scarlet letter. So he will forever be known as a black man who dared to run away for his freedom. That's crazy. But that's a part of the psychological trauma. That's a part of what happened to us. In this movie, they're literally showing a snippet of what happened to us. So, they also showed a man who basically he became deceased because he was overworked. This man and Will and Peter, rather, they were carrying like logs and carrying things together, and the man just fell out and he passed away. And so, no, my bad. That wasn't the man that passed away. That wasn't the man that was eliminated because he fell out and passed away. I'm getting ahead of myself. This is the man who was eliminated simply because he was overworked. One of the white workers took a to the dome because the man was tired. Because this man was overworked, this man was tired. Because he was tired, because he needed a rest, because his body quit on him, his body gave out. The white man took the dome in elimination. It's what they're showing in the movie, right? Just an explanation of what happened. That's an explanation of what happened. A lot of things that we talk about on this channel. And so the thing too about the man that was being branded is they put an emphasis on his screams the whole time, everything that was happening to him. And matter of fact, after he was branded, into the night, they tied him to a whipping post and whipped him into the night. And you could hear the screams. You could hear this man's screams from the time they captured him and brought him back to the camp to the time they stopped whipping him late into the night. They put an emphasis on his screams so you can hear exactly what was happening to this man. That was a message to the rest of the camp that if you try to escape, you try to free yourself, if you get caught up with this Draketomania in you, you too will be punished and you could possibly even be eliminated. So that particular man and Peter, Will Smith's character, had a interesting encounter. So after the man was beat, they took him and put him into this encased area where they had Peter and a lot of the other men encased. And so Peter was there trying to inspire and instill and empower the other men to continue on, because God has a plan. Because like I said, Peter was a staunch believer, and he was a big believer in Jesus. So his only issue was none of the other men shared his belief, especially not the man who was just caught, branded, and beaten to the knife. Because this is the conflict the man is having. Peter is telling them that Jesus has a plan, God will save them, and the man is like, well, where's your God? He basically saying, man, look at what just happened to me. Look at what's happening to us. Where is your God? Why is your God allowing this to happen to us? If your God is so real, your God is so faithful, your God is so loving, your God is such a deliverer, why haven't your God delivered us? Why are we still here in bondage, being traumatized the way we are by these people, if your God is everything you say he is? So Peter, one of the things that they used in this movie though is, even though the conditions were what they were, Peter's belief in Jesus is what led him to freedom. So despite the slavery, despite the oppression, despite Christianity and Jesus being used to enslave the black people, Peter believed that Jesus was the reason why he was going to be free. And so once again, as they move forward in the movie, you still have the preacher in the background preaching the message of the obedient slave. Be obedient to your master. This is only temporary. This too shall pass. And so one of the parts, and I caught this in the movie, the preacher literally says,
it's okay to work and die for your master.
That's why they have the preacher there. He says, he literally said,
it's okay to work and die for your master.
Because that is the plan of God. That is what God has in store for you. You not only enslave a person's body, you have to enslave their mind and their spirit. You have to break them. You have to totally break the person in order for the person to be an obedient slave. Body, mind, and spirit. The body is the work. The mind is the psychological trauma. And the spirit is the preacher reinforcing the message, or the so-called message of God. This is the cycle. This is the trauma that they showed in the movie. Physical trauma, psychological trauma, and the spiritual trauma. So Peter, so at this point they move forward in the movie. So this is the point where Peter overhears some of the white men talking about how the Union Army has encroached upon Baton Rouge, and also Lincoln has signed the Emancipation Proclamation. So black people in America are legally free, but they can't tell they slaves because they still got a whole lot of work to do, because they got a water win. They got to maintain this. Remember, the South is fighting to succeed from the United States. So he hears the people talking about there's freedom on the way. And so now Peter goes and tell the other men that, hey, not only did Lincoln sign the Emancipation Proclamation, but if we get to Baton Rouge, we can get to the Union Army and we can be free. And we can be free. Follow the sounds of the cannon to freedom. That's what he did, and that's what he told others. Follow the sounds of the cannons to freedom. And that's going to help them later on. So Peter continued to be defiant, and once again, remember the defiance is a part of the character that is built within his belief in God and his belief in Jesus. So he continues to challenge these white men. So there's his nemesis is Jim Fessel. And Jim Fessel is a hunter and a tracker. And Fessel doesn't like Peter because Peter got too much spirit in him. He got too much spunk. He got too much freedom in him. And he notices how Peter challenges the other white men. And Fessel don't like that. So there's one scene where Peter is in the engagement with the other slaves and they're sitting around. They're just sitting around. And Fessel comes up behind him on the other side of the cage and starts whispering in his ear and basically tells Peter that he is his God. He is in control of him. He literally tells Peter that he is his God. He tells Peter that Peter is his dog. Peter, you are my dog. I am your God. And I control whether you live or die. That set the confrontation between the two. But Peter tried to, being slick, Peter says, well, shoot, if I'm your dog, that means that I'm going to eat better. Because Peter recognizes that even the dogs eat better than the men out here working who are enslaved. Think about that. That's how real slavery was, right? Even the dogs of the white men eat better than the slaves. So that was the joke or the dig Peter took back at Fessel. So later on in this particular scene, because Fessel don't like that, so a part of the psychological and the physical trauma, but more so psychological at this point, Fessel he has Peter kneeling down on his knees and he's chained, and Peter is here, and the dog, a barking, growling, vicious dog that wants to bite and eat Peter, is this close to his face. So Fessel fixed the chain, so the dog is right here. The dog can't really get to him, but the dog is right here. So the intimidation factor. And that's happening. The dog is just all in his face, just barking and growling and spitting and slobbing and stuff all in his face. And Fessel is in the background reminding Peter that he is his God and he controls his life. So that's showing that Fessel got this God complex, but Fessel has it in him to break Peter. Peter got too much spirit in him. Peter got too much freedom in here. So all right, so let's move forward. So later on, Peter tells the other slaves that they are free and they need to get to Baton Rouge, and that Baton Rouge is a 5-day trip from where they are. But they got to go through the swamp to reach their freedom. A 5-day trip through the swamp of Louisiana. So at this point, this is where I got ahead of myself earlier. The man, it was Peter and another man who were carrying items, and the man falls over and passes away. The man has literally been worked until he was eliminated. And so they tell him, all right, Peter, you pick him up and throw him in the pit. So they have this grand pit of overworked, deceased black men. A grand pit that they are housing, that they just dug in the ground, and they're housing the corpses of deceased, overworked black men. And so at this point, they have a group of white men whose job is to throw lime on top of the pit to try to dead the smell, because it's a whole massive smell of decaying bodies. So they have them throwing the lime on top of the bodies. But as Peter goes over and Peter throws the body of the man into the pit, so they instruct one white man, who I guess is in charge, he instructs the other white men to continue throwing the lime. The dude like, man, I ain't doing that. You got a perfectly good black man. He didn't say black man, he said the N-word, but you got a perfectly good black man right here. Make him do it. So this is where things get interesting. Because remember, Peter had already told the other men about their freedom. And Baton Rouge is only 5-day trip from the swamp. The tipping point. Peter's had enough. The black men have had enough. They've been overworked. They've been beaten. They've been beaten down physically. They've been beaten down psychologically. They've been beaten down emotionally. They don't want to live this life no more. They want to rebel. They just don't know how to rebel. So Peter digs the shovel into the lime. And as he goes to, as he has the lime and the shovel, a cannon or dynamite goes off in the back. Big explosion. The explosion is enough to cause a bit of a distraction. So with that, Peter takes the lime, because there's a white man. So before I say that, there's a white man in front of Peter and a white man behind Peter. I don't think the white man behind Peter has the gun. Peter takes the lime as the explosion goes off, take the lime and throws it into the face of the man. And bam, hit him in the face with the shovel. Turns around, bam, hit the man in the face with the shovel. Takes out the man behind him. He takes out the man in front of him. Takes out a couple more people. They all scatter. All the black men scatter and start running. They start running for freedom. And at this point, Fessel and some of the other white people who had began picking off black men. Because remember, Fessel is attracting the country, so they began picking off black men, trying to get as many as they can, trying to recapture as many as they can. And so this is the point where Peter and 3 other black men who are going in the same direction. They're running for their freedom. And Peter believes and is communicating to these men that God is leading him to freedom. And so at this point, Peter and the men, they're running through the woods, and then they get to this point to where the woods turn to a swamp, and they have to go through the swamp. So it's 4 men. And so they go into the swamp. It's the 3 of the 4 men go into the swamp. The 4th man don't go into the swamp because he sees an alligator in the swamp. He like, nah, I ain't going in there. So he stays at the bank. He freezes up and he stays at the swamp bank. Peter and the other 3 men, they like, forget this, alligator or not, we going in the swamp. So Peter has a knife. One of the men have a gun, and the other man doesn't have a weapon. So they go into the swamp because they get into the other side. And so at this point, Fessel and the 3 men that are with him, they catch up to the black man at the bank of the swamp. And this is where they show like the naivete, the ignorance, and the gullibleness of this particular slave. They want to show this particular slave's name was Thomas, and they were basically showing, remember now, think about what I'm saying, they're showing that Thomas isn't as intelligent as he should be. Thomas is gullible. Thomas is simple-minded, because they basically convinced Thomas to tell them where Peter and the others are going, and if he tells them, then he will let them go. He will let Thomas go free, and he won't do anything, just let him go. And so finally Thomas gives in and tells them that that Peter and the other 3 men are on their way going to Baton Rouge. All right. And so Fessel like, all right, well, you go ahead, go free. Thomas turns around, walks into the swamp, and he's walking slow. He just like, I don't really know. I'm just walking slow. So he's walking slow. Fessel turns, pulls out his. So this is when this line is deep. Fessel turns to one of the other white men after he kills Thomas, and he says,
You see an N word with an idea, best put him underground.
Now think about that. Think about everything that has happened throughout the history of black people in the United States. You see an N word with an idea, best put him in the ground. Fred Hampton. Medgar Evers, Martin Luther King, Malcolm X. Many, many, many others are just examples. It's not something new. It's not something that just was made up in the 60s with COINTELPRO because they were afraid of the Black Panthers. No, man. That was instilled in them from the beginning. The psychology that was in this movie is deep. That was the best part of the movie. I don't think the movie overall was a great movie. It was a cool movie. It's okay. But the psychology of slavery was the best part. I give them an A because it showed how, like I talked about in my review of those last 2 chapters of Dr. Francis Cress Welsing's ISIS Papers book. It showed how the system of anti-blackness affects both Black people and white people. It affects both. So so now they so time goes. So at this point, Fessel and his men are in pursuit of Peter and the other 3 men. So they're more so in pursuit of Peter because remember, Fessel has it out for Peter because Peter thinks too big of himself. He got too much freedom in him, and Fessel is hell bent on beating that freedom out of Peter, even if he has to eliminate Peter. He's hell bent on beating that freedom out of Peter, right? So once again, Peter is in the swamp. So at this point, Peter and the other 3 men, they split up. They go in different directions, and Peter tells them to go in different directions. Well, actually, the man went in his own direction first, and Peter told the other Black man, we're going to go in different directions because it'll make it harder for them to track us. Because also Peter knew that Fessel was specifically after him, and he was really trying to help the other 2 men get the freedom because he know Fessel was after him. So Peter is in the swamps. Before he get to another area of the swamp, he has to pass another plantation. He's exhausted, he's dehydrated, he's hungry, and he has a wound in his right leg. So he sees this, he comes upon this plantation and he sees this clothesline with some white bed sheets. But before he get to the white bed sheets, he hides behind these logs, these fire logs, and he sees a bucket of water with the ladle of water, and so he gets his drink of water. Then he sees the sheets on the clothesline, and he also sees potatoes. But this family is on the front porch and they're eating supper. But at this point, the family is praying, and so as the family is praying, this is his point to run. So he runs and he snatches the bed sheet, and then he snatches a couple potatoes, all he can grab in a fell swoop, right? But the young girl at the table, she was the only one that didn't have her eyes closed. And as she see Peter running, he snatches the sheet, the potatoes and stuff. He's running. She stands up and says, "Runner, runner, 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 runner." I wanted one of the because they had 2 Black women as the maids. I wanted one of them to elbow her. But so the little girl daddy, he was soft anyway. He ran inside, got, and his shot too big for him. He wasn't about that life because you could tell how he was looking. He ain't never really used that before. And so, but as he's running on his porch, pretending like he's about to use his, he sees Fessel and his men. And remember, Fessel has a Black dude with him too. Fessel, one of the 3 men with Fessel, is a Black dude who's a traitor and who was one of the trackers as well, because that's going to be important later on. So they tell him which way Peter is going, and the white man says, "It went that way. It went that way." Dehumanization, because we don't see you as a human being. So fast forward, Peter is running. He used the white bed sheet to wrap around the wound on his leg to stop the bleeding a bit. But these dogs are tracking him. And remember, the dog that was in his face doing all that barking, that dog has his scent. So the dog is specifically after him because Fessel did that specifically so the dog would have his scent. So if he ever ran, because he has it out for Peter, if he ever ran, the dog could specifically track him. So Peter, using his brain, knowing that the dog is after him too, and the dog is leading Fessel to him, he takes the sheet off of his leg and hides it under a log, and then Peter hides literally in the swamp water. So as Fessel and the white man and the black man approaches the area where Peter hid the bed sheet, and he's hiding in the water. At this point, Peter has to submerge himself all the way into the water. So he holds his breath and he goes down, and he has to stay under there for a couple minutes. And then he comes up. Now, this is where it gets fantastic. Now, don't try to quote me on the historical accuracy of this, because I haven't really checked into the historical accuracy of this yet. I'm just giving you a breakdown of the movie. I'll come back later with the history of this, because of course this is an interesting story. So I'm just giving you the breakdown of the movie though. So he is in the water. So after Fessel and the men leave, he's in the water, he's coming up, he's breathing for air. So a whole big old alligator comes and grabs him by the leg, drags him underwater, start doing the death roll and everything. That's where it gets fantastic, because this alligator has a hold on Peter, and Peter just gets away, kicks the alligator. The alligator comes at him with the mouth wide open. He takes a log and puts it in the alligator's mouth, and they're fighting, and then eventually Peter pulls out a knife and is able to fight off the alligator with a knife, and he wins the fight. He wins the fight against the alligator. Fantastic. Come on, man. We all know how tough alligator skin is. Peter, the blade on this knife is about this big, man. Come on, man. But whatever, the fantasticness of that. But anyway, Peter was able to get away from the alligator. That was significant because Fessel and his men came back to that area looking for Peter, and they found a dead alligator, and they cut the alligator open to see if the alligator died because he ate Peter, and they found out there's no human remains inside Peter, and that was like, oh shoot, this man defeated an alligator. That made Fessel even more upset. He like, oh no, I got to kill this N-word. I got to kill this N-word. Who he think he is? He got too much freedom in him. He got too much of that Jesus energy, that Negro freedom in him. I got to get him. That really made Fessel mad. So, sitting around the camp. So they pulled the alligator. Like I said, they opened the alligator up to see if Peter wasn't in there. He wasn't in there, but they like, all right, well, we got food. So they're sitting around a campfire. And Fessel, part of the psychology of how the system of white anti-blackness affects both, right? It rots the brain of both sides, white and black. So sitting around this campfire, and Fessel is telling a story about the only person who really showed him love in his life. Fessel is a man who believes that you can't give black people a chance, because if you give them a chance, they'll take over everything. And you have to eliminate them. And I tell you why he believes that. The only person to ever really show him love in his life was a black woman who was his caretaker when he was growing up. He loved this woman, and he felt like she loved him. He would sneak food to her because his daddy treated her as if she was an animal. And his daddy treated her as if she was an animal for a reason. But as a young boy, Fessel would sneak and give her food. So one day he got caught giving her food. And his daddy basically told him that you can't give the Negroes the food, because if you give the Negroes the food, then the Negro will take more and take more and take more. And eventually they will take over. This was the belief of his daddy. If you give them an inch, they will take everything from us and eliminate us. The fear of genetic annihilation, the fear of being eliminated. And so his dad left the black woman, left her outside for and put outside, and took her 3 days to pass away. And she asked him why did he do it, and as a young boy he didn't understand it, but as he grew up he adopted the idea, basically, like, you have to treat them as animals no matter what, because you have to protect. You have to protect what you have. You have to protect what you've taken from them. In order to keep them in a subservient position, they have to know their place. You can't show your livestock love. You can't show something love that you are willing to eliminate. So later on they get to a scene where Peter's wife is still back on the original plantation that Peter was taken from. So Peter's wife is there, and Peter's wife is basically informed that she will be sold away, and she will be sold away from her children. Just 4 children. So the white man just casually strolls up to her, tell her the news, you're going to be sold away from your children. So she has to do something. So one of the men that is escaped, the guy with the Peter, he was eventually caught. He and Peter reunited somewhere in the mangroves of the swamp. And the man was like, you brought the gun, you brought the dogs my way. The man has a gun. And so they have to find a place to hide. Peter hides within the roots of a mango tree while the man hides in the tree. The dogs caught the scent of the man hiding in the tree. Fessel aims his gun. The man comes down. As the man is laying on the ground with the wound, writhing in pain for being shot and falling on the ground from high in the ground from a tree, he's being bitten by the dogs and tortured. And they're doing this because they want him to give up Peter's location. He didn't snitch, though. He did not snitch. Even though he was mad that Peter brought the dogs his way, he did not snitch. He was tortured, but he did not snitch. And so this just all really just highlights more of Fessel's obsession with Peter, because Fessel has to eliminate Peter, because ain't no way this Negro can defeat Fessel. Fessel is taking it personal now. This Negro is trying to defeat me. I have to find him and make him submit to me and understand that I am his God. That's Fessel's thoughts. And so back to Peter's wife. After getting the news that she is going to be sold into slavery, she doesn't want to be sold away from her children, because when the guy initially told her that she was going to be sold, she thought that she was going to be sold with her 4 children. Then he told her, no, you're going to be sold away from your children. So her and her oldest daughter came up with a plan for her to not be sold, because damaged goods don't sell. So to keep from being sold, Peter's wife literally got her hand jammed and crushed in the cotton gin machine, or the cotton pressing machine, and it mangled her arm in the machine. And it's just the screams. But that's what she felt was the best thing she could do, the best choice from all the decisions that she had. That's the best choice she had. To be sold away from her children was to have her arm mangled in the machine, to go through physical harm to remain with your children. That's a lot. So the movie goes on and on and on, and at this point, Fessel is just chasing Peter. It's a Will Smith movie, so 2 things with this Will Smith movie. Will Smith is playing a man of African descent, so Will Smith's African accent is horrible. I do not like Will Smith's African accents. Will Smith, stop doing African accents. And he was running, doing a whole lot of running. Will Smith runs in every movie. So Peter is getting closer and closer and closer to Baton Rouge, because he can hear the cannon fire from where he is, and he is starting to see the remnants from battle. He's starting to see bodies on the ground and just dismay and everything from the battles. And so as the night falls, he comes upon this big house. And this big house is set on fire because this big house, the Union soldiers just came and defeated a lot of the men there. So while at the house, he goes into the house. And I'm just like, oh man, don't go in the house, man. The house on fire. Don't go in the house. Oh, he go in the house. And not only do he go in the house, he go deep in the house, and he go upstairs in the house. While the house is on fire and starting to fall apart, he goes upstairs in the house. But he hears this strumming. This room, room, room. He hears the strumming of a harp. And he goes into this particular room where he hears the strumming. He sees like this 5 to 6 year old young black girl who's severely wounded. And he takes the black girl outside to try to tend to her to see what's happening. And while he's outside tending to this girl, one of the men that was with Fessel, because Fessel and his men had started to catch up with Peter. They basically caught up with him. So the white guy that was with Fessel basically comes up behind Peter and points. He's telling Peter to just let the girl die because you finna come with us because Fessel wants you. The little girl eventually passes, and Peter, the little girl had a necklace, a cross necklace on her, and he takes the cross and he makes it into a weapon. And as the white man is distracted, he pushes the gun up, and so he defeats the white guy. And then the black guy comes up, and Peter, bam, takes the rifle and bam. And so then as he shoots the black man, he kneels down to tell the black man, "You're the worst of the worst." And the black man trying to explain to him, "You got a family. You got people that love you. I don't." And so what's crazy though is Peter runs off. So Fessel comes up, and Fessel sees the black man. The black man crying for help. And Fessel pulls out his gun and blam. And so now Fessel actually catches Peter. Fessel forces Peter to his knees, has the gun pointed at Peter, forces Peter to his knees. And as Fessel is beginning to try to torture Peter, blam! Fessel's eyes get big and he falls over. Peter has no idea what has happened. All he knows, he heard a gun. Black Union soldiers came and they rescued Peter. So the Black Union soldiers eliminated Fessel, and they rescued Peter and recruited Peter to join the Union Army. But one thing Peter learned when he joined the Union Army is these white men, the white people in the Union Army, though they may not see you as a slave, they still see you as less than, and they still see you as labor. And now we all know that the Union would not have won the Civil War without all of the black men who joined the Union Army. But in this, the liberal treatment that we talk about in these breakdowns, the liberal treatment is, we don't think y'all should be slaves, but we still think we better than y'all. So Peter is in the Union Army. Peter is free, and Peter is fighting for his freedom and yada 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 yada, and he eventually becomes a free man, and the story ends. And now one of the scenes ends. Peter gets to, Peter gets to tell his story to some of the people, and then this picture is taken. They have Peter in this tent and these two photographers, and they have him take his shirt off, and they get into the pose, and they take this picture and they capture that into the movie. And after that, yada yada yada, he's free, and he goes on to live his life and everything. So that's pretty much the movie. Like I say, if I had to give the movie a rating of stars from 1 to 5, I'd give it 2.5 stars. Like I say, the part that I really stood out, that really caught my attention, kept my attention, was them showing the psychological trauma, because it was just interesting how they were portraying it. They were, like I said, they were portraying it from a physical standpoint, from a psychological standpoint, from a spiritual standpoint. How slaves were treated and how the system of enslavement was maintained So, no, that's my thoughts on the movie. If you want to go check the movie out, like I say, it was a spoiler. If you want to go check the movie out, check it out. But I probably won't sit through it again. I watched it twice. I watched it once to see if it was worth the breakdown. So I watched it again so I could take notes, because I figured it is worth the breakdown. Is it worth really watching again? So 2.5 stars out of 5 I give it. But that is my summary and review of things, of what happened and what stood out to me in the Emancipation movie. They really highlighted the psychological trauma of slavery, the physical trauma of slavery, the spiritual trauma of slavery. What really happened to the black people that were enslaved. That was highlighted. So go check it out for yourself. Hey, this is all I got for you. That's all I got. I'm all out of this review for Emancipation. Will Smith's Emancipation. Subscribe to this YouTube channel. Make sure y'all hit that like button. Hit that like button. That helps the algorithm. That helps more people see my content. Hey, look, I have a goal. I have a goal that I need to reach, and I need to reach my goal, and I need y'all help. So I need y'all to hit that like button. I need people to see this content. I need people to get this information. I need people to get it. We got to uplift our people. We got to know what's going on. This movie gave insight as to the why of what happened to us. www.ontheshoulders1.com. Subscribe. On the Shoulders of Giants. I am Joseph Ward. I am out. Make sure y'all catch this next video. I love y'all.